Hello everyone, this is Loco S, and welcome to a start of a new video series that I've been wanting to do for quite a long time. This is a video series where we're going to go to and tour basically all of the maps in DCS World. Our goal in this tour is to basically visit every airport and every major point of interest on all the maps. We're going to start the tour in the Caucasus map, and for Caucasus, we're basically going to work from west to east. We're starting off at Anapa. So, let's go ahead here. Tear that down. Make sure we have full engine RPM on our start. Everything's good here. Get both magnetos up and running. And release the brake. Power up. Okay. Alright, taxiing. So, things to note about Anapa. Anapa in real life is actually a international civilian airport. In DCS world, it is a military airport, however, but in the real world, it's a civilian airport. Wouldn't be shocked if it was one of those things where the DCS World Caucasus map is based off, I believe, the 2008 invasion of Georgia by Russian forces. So it could have been that, what is it at this point? At least like over 10 years ago, it was a military air base, and then they just transformed it into a civilian air base. Or it could have been just a civilian airport all along, but DCS World needed more military airports in this side of the world, so they figured they would just create another military air base. Caucasus map is kind of like that, where there's a lot of air bases that are sort of more historical, but they just added them in just probably because they wanted to give an extra range of air bases. The air base here, by the way, does have a lot of these hardened aircraft shelters. They are impervious to most weapons, so it's a really good air base to have. It's a really good air base if you want to have like one end of the world, have a player group here. It's because of all these hardened aircraft structures give a relatively safe space for people to spawn in, get their aircraft set up and started up before they try to taxi to the runway while under fire. Other than that, like I said, there's plenty of these hardened aircraft shelters. There's a smaller ramp that we will see once we take off. And let's actually request takeoff clearance. There's actually also plenty of ramp space for larger aircraft, as well as with the new mission editor function. You can actually go ahead and place down basically random aircraft wherever you want, and have them do a ground start for these player-controlled aircraft. So there's plenty of parking spaces for AI and player aircraft. Also to note, before we take off, something I always do something that I always forget that I want to make sure I do this time, is to go ahead and cage our horizon. As we look off to the left here, there we go. Those bear bombers, they are static objects. I placed them to represent that you can actually, with Anapa, it's one of the at least in this western side of the map, it is actually one of the best places to have large aircraft. So if you want to have like a lot of like bomber aircraft, like those Tu-95 bear bombers, or if you have Tupolev 22. I think they're fullbacks. There's a whole bunch of other aircraft you can have in DCS world for like bombers and stuff that you can have right there, and you can go ahead. You can use that. You can use the northernmost ramp and have your bombers there. Let's see, I know I'm flying a bit weird because I have the flaps down, so let's make sure to raise those flaps. There we go. It's been a while since I've flown the Yak 52. Plus, it's one of those, because it's a prop aircraft, straight wing, it does have a lot of lift at the start, so it's something that, like, unless you have your HOTAS bound, and I do believe, unfortunately, that my HOTAS, there's been so many updates since I last flown it, the HOTAS has become unbound. So, it's a little bit rough to take off, but we managed to take off. And most importantly, I remembered this time to use the ADI. So quick orbiting around. We'll give one good orbit of Anapa from a little bit higher up in the air before we head off to our next air base, which is Novorossiysk. And while we're in the air, we'll go over a quick itinerary of today's plan. Today's plan is to head up where we took off from Anapa. As you can see down there, Novorossiysk, which is a Russian naval base for the Black Sea Fleet, and then we're going to head up Krymsk, which is a airport servicing basically sort of a beach town, beach resort town, and then we're going to go to Krymsk, which is an actual real life military air base for the Russian Air Force. So you can kind of see from Anapa from up above, plenty of open apron space for your if you want to do ground starts for player aircraft. Plenty of hardened aircraft shelters for smaller tactical aircraft, as well as this northern ramp here. There's space for at least a good number of heavy bomber aircraft for your other, for your more like your AWACS, your tankers. Also, again, heavy bombers if you want to use them. So Anapa is a pretty cool place just for that. It's one of the not too many other of these air bases we're visiting today have the space for like large bomber aircraft. At least in, well, you can use them in somewhat significant numbers, but not quite like Anapa where you have all this open airspace. And also, to note, there's also a whole other complex of on the northern end. You have an apron up there, and you also have some more hardened aircraft shelters. So that's Anapa. So we're gonna go from Anapa. Now that we're up relatively high, we're going to try and make our way over to Novorossiysk, which is southeast along the coast. Something I want to mention about the Caucasus map before I leave you guys to just sort of zen out, listen to the engine, and observe the beautiful summertime in the Caucasus map. Two things to note. Speaking of that beautiful summer weather and visuals, Caucasus map is the only map in DCS world that has all 4 seasons modeled currently. I do believe Normandy 2, which maybe might be out by the time this video goes live, maybe not. Normandy 2 is going to have 3 seasons. No winter season for Normandy 2. But you could definitely Caucasus does have all 4 seasons. Hopefully more maps. Hopefully the Kola map has all 4 seasons modeled. That'd be nice. But definitely Caucasus has all 4. Spring and summer look pretty close to pretty identical. There's some minor differences, but spring and summer look pretty close. Fall is gorgeous. Everything, all the trees turn brown. Definitely, there's different textures for the farmland, and the grass looks a little bit different. But most importantly, the trees turn very striking, and winter is basically sort of like a winter wonderland. Snow everywhere, snow on all the trees. It's really cool. Second thing to note is the Caucasus map is the only map really set up to handle Russian aircraft and how they navigate. Not a lot of the other maps have there's actually 3 ways now I think about it. 3 ways that Russian aircraft navigate. One is they use RSBN. One of the ways is RSBN. Another way is PRMG. And only certain aircraft, and really the only aircraft that can use those right now are the, is only the MiG-21. Hopefully the MiG-23, when it comes out, will eventually be able to use RSBN and PRMG. But that's kind of a question mark. Especially because we haven't heard too much about the MiG-23 project. I do believe hopefully Razbam will give us an update after their Strike Eagle releases. But currently only the MiG-21 uses those, and this is currently the only map that has those systems enabled. Even though I believe the Iranians on the Persian Gulf map, and the Egyptians on the upcoming Sinai map, and the Syrians on the Syria map, are all users of the MiG-21. none of their air bases are set up for PRMG or RSBN, or at least I do believe the actual quote unquote RSBN system. There are ADF beacons I do believe the MiG-21 can use, and I think that's how it navigates. I think it can navigate with those two. It's been a while since I've flown the MiG-21, so that just might be just a case those countries decided not to invest in the navigation equipment for whatever reason, and decided instead to just focus on performance and just again cutting down on avionics, cutting down on maintenance, or just might be those countries never figured to set up or those countries just never bought the auxiliary equipment. Who knows? That's just how that is. The others, there was one other system, and this is more or less used. This is used on both the Yak-52 that I'm flying right now, as well as the L-39C and ZA, and that is a inner and outer radio beacon marker. So down here we have the ARC system. It's the ARC-15, and up here, as I try to keep this aircraft flying straight, we have this system up here. It's an outer and an inner. See the needle isn't going to adjust too far out because we're a little too far out, but the inner and outer marker system, basically there's two ADF beacons in a line with the runway heading, and you use the better cut down the engine power a little bit so I don't blow out the engine. There we go. We should come down on the engine heat. Alright, there we go. Alright. The joys of flying and talking. So, now their engine isn't going to be as likely to blow up. So the inner and outer beacon system for the Russians, they basically use two ADF beacons, or two radio beacons, in a line, in a line of the actual runway heading as well. So you use the you navigate to the outer beacon, and then you switch to the inner beacon, and you kind of switch back and forth between the two at long range, and then that way you kind of know that you're on heading for the actual runway. So you can kind of use your compass, your HSI, and the two radio beacons. You can all use those all in combination, like make sure you're on runway heading and you're actually ready to land. You can also use the inner and outer beacon marker to determine if you are past certain points. Whereas if you're flying over the beacon and all of a sudden the beacon goes 180 on you, you know that you're over the outer beacon and you're X many meters. I believe it's 600 for the outer and 300 for the inner. That way you can tell how far you are from the runway threshold. And from that backwards, logic out how far you need to, or how high you need to be at that altitude, that far away from the threshold. So we're coming up on Novorossiysk now, and there seems to be a fire in the port town. We'll see what that's about when we get a little bit closer. But Novorossiysk is indeed a combination of a military base for the Russian Black Sea Fleet, as well as actually a pretty large industrial port. It is going to be interesting because the Novorossiysk airport, in-game, it's a thing, but in real life it's not. It does appear a long time ago there might have been an airport where there is one right now, but when I looked at Google Earth a while back, it looked like it'd been long abandoned, even in like I think I found images of it back in like the 90s or 80s, maybe the 70s. I forget now how far I actually managed to find Google Earth images of it, but I went back fairly far, like at least to the 80s, and there was no air base at that time. It looks like there was remnants of one, but that's even then sort of a maybe. But for DCS purposes, I do like to use the Novorossiysk airport sort of like a naval Aviation Airport. So I have Su-33 stationed there. I believe they're called Kanamov 28s or 26s. They're the twin rotor, smaller helicopter that they use on the Russian ships for anti-submarine warfare duties. Plus, also as a transport helicopter to get supplies and marines and other things on ships or off ships, stuff like that. I like to use that for that. Plus, I use some support aircraft. So I do like to use it in game. It's a fun little naval air base. They have hardened aircraft shelters there, as you will see. So again, definitely set it up and themed as like a military air base for like Russian naval aviation. Give them a little air base separate from the Russian Air Force aviation, which has an actual air base at Krymsk, as well as in this game in Anapa. And I realized I really didn't not talk the whole way there, so, huh. We're flying now over Novorossiysk, 250 knots, or 250 kilometers an hour. Just nice, easy, slow prop plane speeds. And we can see up ahead, it's the Admiral Kuznetsov on fire. So, nothing new. Just another normal day in Russia. So, where the Admiral Kuznetsov is, and in this actual port-looking area here in Novorossiysk, that is actually the real-life location of the industrial port. So, the industrial port is all throughout here, where you see all these different merchant ships, and here in this bay, that is actually indeed the real-life location of Russia's industrial port for Novorossiysk. Now, it does so happen to be that there is actually a lot of museums for Novorossiysk, for like Russian naval museums, actually in this port here, where that Russian cruiser is right off my left wing right now, and there's that sort of looks like a sort of a headquarters building. That actually is in real life a naval museum. There's a naval ship museum there. I do believe it looks like a World War II era Russian cruiser. So there's it was a World War II Russian era cruiser there as a naval floating museum, as well as an actual naval museum where that building is next to it. Other than that, there's a whole bunch of like sculptures and museums and memorials all along this area right here for Novorossiysk. Now, if you're wondering, okay, so obviously where the Russian Kuznetsov is on fire in front of us, that's not where the Russian naval base is in real life. Where is it in real life? If you look over here, I had those Rapucha class landing ships and those those fast attack boats. I think they're, I want to say they're Grishas or Molianas. That area right in front of us right now, that's where the Russian naval base is in the real world. Obviously, it's not modeled here in DCS. It could have just been something that was relatively that was built up in the past 15 years or so. But it does look, but at least in DCS world, it is kind of sort of there as a physical location. But there's no build up. There's no military. There's this whole area in Google Earth right now. If you look at this like spot in Google Earth, this whole area is like built up to the wazoo, where it's a whole bunch of shipyards, a whole bunch of stuff like that. There's even sort of like a flanker on display, sort of like as one of those memorials / monuments. So it is basically this whole area right here would be a Russian naval base. In DCS world, if you fly out to the Novorossiysk air base in this game, I like to use this naval port. I like to use this port here as a naval base. So you can definitely have a lot of ships in there. can even have the Russian ships like sort of like outside of the harbor. I like to place them inside the harbor right there, and you can treat that sort of as the Russian naval base here. It provides a pretty good, as is, it does provide a pretty good amount of set scenery for a naval base. So I do like to use it for that. Now on our nose here, we are going to overfly the Novorossiysk airport in DCS. It's a relatively short runway for our DCS airbase, so you do want to be careful if you're flying certain aircraft, like I think I want to say like the F-16 and the F-15, like U.S. Air Force aircraft or aircraft that don't that rely heavily on aero braking to land. It is a very short runway, or at least a fairly short runway in DCS world for military aircraft. So just be careful. Just keep in mind you you definitely want to be on speed, if not below. Honestly, below speed. You definitely want to make sure you're not also heavy, so you don't run long. But you can actually use this airbase, this runway to take off from. You can have a whole bunch of different aircraft on here. They'll take off just fine, and so long as they expend all their ordnance and most of their fuel, they'll be pretty much any aircraft can land here without too much difficulty. Russian aircraft, most Russian aircraft, I believe, are equipped with parachutes, so all of them can land there no problem. And as you can see there, a whole bunch of the hardened aircraft structures for military aircraft. The northmost parking ramp has larger spots for like support aircraft, like those AN-26 transports. And down below here, the southernmost ramp is mostly smaller spaces for aircraft like those Su-25. So there's Su-33 Flanker Ds, as well as those Katamov 26s I was talking about earlier, that are Russian, basically anti-submarine warfare helicopters. Let's zoom out here so there we go. We can see a little bit better. We're not constantly having to play around the camera too much. And let's get back to looking forward as we head out to Krymsk, which is our next airport. Alright, as we pass Novorossiysk Air Base one last time, again, when I look at my wing, see if I can get a good view. There we go. We have the sea flankers down below, Katamov 20 helicopters, and we have those transports off at the far side. Alright. So we're leaving basically the Russian military naval base, and I sort of like to use it also as a naval air base with the airport nearby. You can definitely have Russian sea flankers take off from there. You can have them like do practice like land ops there, and then later on they can fly out to the boat and then do. You can have the Admiral K when it's not on fire, out doing carrier ops near Georgia. So we're heading to Krymsk next. Krymsk is if you use this basically bay of Novorossiysk, you can go across the bay over there on the other side of the little bay there. There's a valley in between these two mountains. Krymsk is literally just on the other side, and there's a smaller port. There's a smaller bay out there, and that's Krymsk. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop talking for them. I'm gonna give my voice a little bit of time to rest, as you guys can listen to the sound of the engine and the sights of me flying over to the luxury port town / beach resort of Krymsk. Let's go. Alright, folks, and we now have Galinsdeck in view in front of us. Obviously, because this map is representing an area of the world like 15, 20, about 15 years-ish ago, and Russia has done a lot to develop this area of their country for reasons. It's a little bit more quieter. I think in the if you look at Google Maps, this whole area, this whole bay would just be covered in like pretty big resorts. But right now it's sort of more like, honestly, kind of like my style, where it's a bit more laid back, a bit smaller paced, a bit more of a chill beach area of the world. Off to our right, we have Galinsdeck Airport. In DCS world, as well as in real life, it's more or less represented as a sort of a small, chill, not really an air base even, it's more of a small, chill local airport. In real life, it is also, it's more of like it's more or less suited for like larger jetliners. But you can also have several military aircraft here. There are some slots for military aircraft. There's no hardened shelters, but there is a decent amount of open apron space for players to set up, as well as you do have the nearby Novorossiysk air base for additional slots if you need more AI aircraft. But if you only want just player aircraft, you can have a decent number of aircraft here. To note, also, like Novorossiysk, relatively short runway and no navigational aids, so definitely a challenge for bad weather landings and even heavier aircraft in general. You want to use this, again, you want to make sure that most of your players are at least going to use all their ordnance and most of their fuel before attempting to land, especially if they don't have parachutes or any other fancy way of slowing down. But really small airport, nice little airport along the northern section of this map. Real life, by the way, real life Galinsdeck is nothing like this. It's a bit bigger, but it does look like on the in the real world on Google Earth, it does look like maybe at one time this airstrip did exist in this rough location, and then they sort of realized, oh, we need a bigger airstrip, and they made a larger airstrip, pointing at a few degrees out that way, and it takes up a lot more room for much larger, heavier, more modern aircraft. Go ahead and buzz this Mi-8 that just landed. And I do actually see at a lot of these civilian airports, by the way, a whole bunch of Mi-8s in civilian, I don't want to say garb, but liveries. I wouldn't be surprised due to Russia's nature and just sort of like having all the extra military hardware around, if they actually didn't use Mi-8s like that, just for like short hops around, if not Russian oligarchs, sort of like even an executive air travel like they have today. There you have it. So that's Galinsdeck. Again, relatively small air base. Not really a whole lot for like definitely nothing for like larger aircraft or a large number of aircraft. But you could definitely have a couple of player aircraft there as well. You could even have like civilian. I like to actually have like a lot of the civilian aircraft, like civilian Mi-8, civilian Yak-52s, civilian Yak-40, like AI aircraft. I like to use it for like those kind of aircraft where like it's more of a sort of like representing a civilian airport. Fly out of there, do some chill flights like this. You can also use it sort of as like a auxiliary airport where you have like your player squadrons there, and then your other AI reinforcement squadrons can take off from other air bases, stuff like that. And if nothing else, you can always use it as a divert airfield. So, after giving this bird enough power to get over this mountain, we want to dial back on the power by quite a bit. We did kind of push the engine a little extra hard earlier on. Alright, so using our radio compass, we do want to head north. Always also use the kneeboard. Bringing up a actual map here. Yeah, we do want to be heading sort of to the a bit askew of that. So hold on. We don't need the aerodrome charts right now. So we do want to be heading a little bit north. I want to see something real quick. I honestly wouldn't be shocked if the radio beacon was stuck and it's not responding, only because we didn't, we're not in line of sight of the actual radio beacon. Krymsk should be to the north and slightly west of Glinzdek, so it should be somewhere over in this area. Like I mentioned with Krymsk earlier, Krymsk is one of the few air bases in DCS world that has access to the PRMG and RSBN radio beacons for the MiG-21. So if you were doing if you were trying to make a MiG-21 based campaign or some serious hardcore MiG-21 missions, highly recommend setting them out of Krymsk for operate for this in this area of the world, just so that way you can actually have your MiG-21s tap into those RSBN beacons and PRMG land. I think it's the PRMG land. It's RSBN for navigation and PRMG for sort of navigation, but it's more for terminal guidance for landing. And I think my FPS just dropped because we just crested that mountain, and there's a whole lot of territory it has to cover now. Alright, recovered. You can still see the Kennesaw burning in the distance. How fitting. Let's see here. Kind of see this part, see if we can find Krymsk. I do believe Krymsk is somewhere over there. Do I have radio navigation? No, I do not. Just want to see something. It has been a while, I will admit. It has been a hot minute since I've flown the Yak 52, so and holy well, okay, now we're good on fuel. Yeah, I know they actually do model, by the way, in this model. Real quick side for this aircraft, they do actually model the fuel sloshing around the tank. So if you see these numbers jump wildly around, it's actually that being modeled, which is pretty cool. But anyways, this part of the world, before we actually get to Krymsk, let's talk about this part of the world. This part of the world is pretty heavily forested, lots of mountains, not a lot of really good areas for like tank battles per se, just because there's not a lot of like super open land. We could definitely have like mountain brigades fighting in here. You having to do cast missions, trying to spot like openings in the woods. A lot of really, this is good helicopter terrain. Having your helicopters flying in here and sort of like do close air support with helicopters, and then troop insertions. I can imagine a lot of cast missions with infantry, like trying to find like, okay, there's like a infantry group and like that opening right there. You have to sort of find that exact opening, drop some bombs so you can take out a mortar squad that's been there. A lot of cool stuff like that for this area of the world. You can see once you get further out past these hills, it gets really flat really fast, and that's where you can have like a lot of like tank battles set up. You can have like SAM systems out there, out in the open, hunting down your cast flights and other aircraft. Lots of fun you can have out here in like these more once you get past the coastal mountainous region in the coastal hills, it flattens out real fast. So, since I can't really seem to find Krymsk that way, there is another way to find an airport. If you know the airport's radio frequency, you can actually go to the comm menu, Krymsk, and we can do inbound. Should probably call an inbound call right now because we're approaching them. Hold on. All right, runway, flying 229. So okay, so I wasn't that far off, but what's going on with my radio compass? Let's see here. Just playing around with the compass right now while see here if we can use it. Well, regardless, I'll get that figured out one day. Let's try to focus on navigating to this airbase. Do a request azimuth again. Just confirm it's 290. I should also mention, wait, I think that's not, I don't think that's Krymsk out that way. Should also mention that whenever they do request navigational assistance, it'll take you out to the initial point for the runway heading. It won't take you directly to the center of the runway. It'll take you out to a point where you can fly in then from. But alright, we're going to fly out a little bit further this way, and hopefully we'll get there fairly soon to do the last leg of this journey. Thankfully, my engine temperatures have come down. Don't worry about that. So, you'll hear from me when we get a little bit closer to Krymsk. let's see. I admit defeat. My pilotage skills aren't quite as good as I thought they were. Now watch. It'll be... I have a suspicion it's somewhere on the nose and to my right. Going by that off my left wing being now due south. More or less. It's just I can't seem to find it looking at the horizon. So let's see here. Where are we on the map? Oh, it's off our right wing, like, almost immediately there. Oh. I'll be danged. Ah, so there's Krymsk. We were right there, more or less. Just didn't bother the thing to look that far to the right yet. Alright, so here we have Krymsk. Off our nose right there. So Krymsk in real life, currently on Google Maps at least, you can look at Krymsk and it's a home to a whole lot of flankers. So it does look like to be a big flanker base as well. So for those of you looking to again have flankers, in addition to MiG-21s, this is a good realistic base to have your flanker squadrons fly out of, as well as your MiG-21 squadrons fly out of. But I'm quite sure as a Russian military air base, you can have any air squadron fly out of here as well. That's just what's currently on display, so to speak. And it's a really good air base in general for DCS. Obviously, the real world and the in-game layout of the air base differ, but they basically do share a lot of similar attributes, such as a huge number of parking spaces. So you don't have to worry about you ever really running out of spots to spawn an aircraft. A large number of wide open tarmac/apron spaces for you to have larger aircraft like supporting AWACS and tankers, as well as transport aircraft for set dressing, and sort of also to have like, hey, you're doing a mission to protect aircraft coming into land to drop off logistics. So there's plenty of realistic there's plenty of things you can do with Krymsk that you can even argue as like semi-realistic or actually realistic. So in a wide open area as well, so you can definitely place your SAM systems out here, and they will be well protected. Also to note, Krymsk does have this wall around the base, and it actually does prevent ground troops from firing into Krymsk. So you can have your SAM systems protected by that at least. It's definitely really good for because I know when I was in what was it, about a couple of months ago, I was doing playing on the Georgia at War server, known as Hoggit's Georgia at War, and I remember actually someone dropped off a Abrams tank and then abandoned it, so I actually picked it up, drove it here to Krymsk, and I had to actually find the base entrance and actually enter in the base through the base entrance rather than through as they're trying to like plow through that wall. So it's a really cool feature. It's a really cool feature. You can definitely again use it for your own missions where you can have troops outside the base and you're trying to protect it. Lots of cool options. Lots and lots of parking. You can see here I have Mi-28s here on the ramp, which is also fairly realistic for Russian air bases to have a few Mi-8s floating around for logistics purposes. Nice big runway, so you don't have unlike Glinsk and Novorossiysk, you don't have to worry about landing with too much weight. You'll definitely have plenty of space to land on. Again, plenty of parkings. It's really cool because it also has a lot of these revetments So you can have larger aircraft protected with a nearby bomb blast, like you have this IL Lucian. I think they're Lucian 78s. They're the transports, either 78s or 76s. I also have here a whole bunch of the AI SU-30 flankers. I have a couple of MiG-21s. Partly to remind myself that that this airbase can indeed actually use MiG-21s. I have a whole bunch of MiG-21s, MiG-27s, SU-27 flankers there, as I nosedive towards the ground. So you can definitely have a lot of aircraft here. You can also see with a lot of those apron spots, you can definitely have with those apron spots more than one player aircraft spawn there. Due to DCS limitations, AI aircraft can only spawn at parking spots, so you're gonna have to only have like one aircraft per parking spot for those. So we're gonna come into a landing now. Now that we've viewed Krymsk, definitely see Krymsk also has a big city attached to it. So you can have some urban combat in this area as well. But again, most of the Krymsk area in here, now that you're away from the coastal hills, it is actually fairly flat, fairly open. You can have a lot of tank battles in here. There's just a little bit of, there's just enough forested areas and like small towns so you can have some cover in those areas. Whoa. Definitely slow speed. Definitely be careful. Gear down. Alright, gear down, and fuel is, we burned through a good amount of fuel, so we should be able to land fairly easily. Alright. Now I know this is not in any stretch of the imagination's a normal pattern, but yeah, we're just gonna do a quick little flyover of this small city here while on our landing configuration. Definitely plenty of spaces here in this small town, in this small city for placing lots of, you can have an infantry mix in here, you can have vehicles duking it out in the streets. Next to this air base, you can have it sort of be like a contested area of the world, where a contested area of your map where you're trying to fight for control of the, you just managed to wrest control of the air base, but there's a guy on like a man pads, like on the rooftops here, so you have to be careful when you take off, not to fly over the city. You have all sorts of fun ideas and fun options with the this area of the world here at Krymsk. Even though it's not anywhere near any IRL locations for like battles or like borders, just go ahead and have fun, be creative. Kind of like with my landing here. Again, this is I wouldn't normally ever do this kind of landing like on a normal mission or anything like that. This is just sort of a map tour, kind of being a little bit sloppy here. Plus, also, just the nature of the this is very much an aerobatic aircraft. It can do these crazy stunts and is slow flying. We come in nice and slow. Sure, our vertical velocity is relatively slow, so we're not going to bounce too hard. And cut power. Cut power, run long. Just start braking ever so intermittently. Once we drop it, we'll get slow enough. Okay, and there we go. Remember to turn with the Yak 52. We have to brake and turn. Brake and turn. Can also see real quick here. We'll do a little bit of a ground tour around Krymsk. See the grass going. definitely Russian airbase. No airfield markings. No markings like for what's the runway. Airport lighting is fairly non-existent. Yeah, you can definitely tell this is a Russian military airport. Also, just because of the fact they just have white lines, there's no like yellow lines for steering around. Plus, also you have these again pretty big revetments. Kind of see if that Yak, so the Ilyushin 76 or 78 transport. The revetment pretty much covers almost the entire aircraft, except for like the very tall tail. But with some of these Su-30 fighters, yeah, it basically covers almost the entirety of the aircraft. So you could definitely have a lot of high-value aircraft in here, all parked together, so it they're protected from any blast outside. Of course, modern day, you're going to put it right smack dab in the middle and toast everything and get chunky salsa effect with all the walls around it containing it. Thin, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do something at least. So that's it. We're going to go ahead and we're going to end this video by parking next to these flankers. Hopefully you found this tour useful, informative, especially with figuring out the some of the very useful like ideas for like what's where in the real world, like just knowing what airports have like what navigation systems. Again, probably should remind you, I've already talked about Krymsk quite a bit, but Anapa does also use Anapa does have the twin beacon system, whereas an inner and outer marker. So you can use the inner and outer marker for that airbase as well. Lots of again hardened shelters here at Anapa, Novorossiysk. Other things of note I want to mention again. Novorossiysk. While the actual Russian military port isn't in game, feel free to get creative with it and. I have an idea. There we go. That shuts down the engine. Not the official way to do it, but it works. It works? Question mark. Oh, there it is. Just did manifold pressure did something weird at the end. But yeah, anyways, with this map again, if Novorossiysk, you can use the civilian port as a military port. But I showed you where the actual real life military port is off to the side. Go have fun with that. My personal recommendation, if you think like, okay, you gotta pick one airport to base all your operations and missions out of in this side of the world, I'd say Krymsk, just because it's the real life version. It's the real life Russian air base for this section of the map, and lots of parking locations, and you have the RSBN, PRMG beacons. You have all the beacons in the world, fairly big, fairly wide open, and you're a little bit closer to the action here at Krymsk. Anapa is literally at the tail end of the map, but Krymsk here is at least a little bit closer to the action, where all the action is. So, in the next video, we're going to be covering areas. I think the next video we're going to be covering Krasnodar and Maykop area. I think we're going to hit Krasnodar area, hit up Maykop, and then we might make our way down to Sochi, depending on time and or fuel. So, until next time, this is Laco S, signing out, and hopefully you found this video useful.